Welcome to Two Women Who Give a Puck. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Tara.
And we are here to highlight the experiences of females in hockey, both coaches and players, as well as to provide tangible ways to make positive changes within the environment. And our guest today is Alicia Pelton, who I'm very excited to have because she is the program director at CoachingHer, which is out of the Tucker Center at the University of Minnesota. And they do research on girls and women in sport. So I know that she is going to have a ton of great positive changes and talking points that we can take away to create a more positive environment for both the players, the coaches, the parents, everyone involved in female athletics. So welcome.
Yes,
Thank
welcome.
you. I'm super excited to be here. I love talking about girls and women in sport. Anything we can do better would be great.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll jump right into it. Since this is a hockey podcast, we always like to talk about hockey. And the Tucker Center, they research girls in all sport. So
Yes.
not just hockey specific, but I know you personally never played, but you yourself have a hockey story and had been a part of the hockey world for quite a while. So can you share your story with
I
us?
played when I was like 40 for like a year and a half.
Oh, good for you.
And yeah, it was awesome. I wish I would have had it as a child, but we didn't have that at all. That wasn't even an option. I didn't experience it until I got to college, where I met my boyfriend at the time, turned to be husband and now ex, but he ended up playing professionally, and I got really involved into the hockey community, right? So we moved around for like 10 years. It was great. I loved the game. I was an athlete. I did 4 sports in high school. I ran track at Wisconsin, and I ended up playing basketball in the Swedish Elite League. So I'm an athlete, and having somebody in relationship with who is an athlete, it was just fun, and I picked up the game and understood it pretty well. And then, of course, we had kids, and you cannot get away from it at all. I tried everything to get them to do basketball or tennis or one of my sports, and that was a no-go. And currently, I have a 28-year-old son who is a pro hockey player, and then my daughter is 20, and she's a college hockey player, so I can't get out of it. But how I got really engaged in hockey, besides working with leadership and aspects of the mental game of hockey, so my kids are 7 years apart, and having a son go through it in an elite way, and then my daughter, who is also really good, but she's not white, she's BIPOC, and to go through that experience was so vastly different in opportunities, how she was treated, the microaggressions against her, and all of her friends and the whole community. I finally was like, I had to step in. And equity is my passion. And so I kind of stepped in a big way and went hard with the state of Wisconsin at the youth level. And within 3 years, gathered a huge community to help me. And we became the fastest growing girls state in the U.S. after 10 years of being totally stagnant.
And what are examples of what you were seeing? Because, we feel it as female athletes who grew up playing hockey. But I think a lot of people still aren't seeing that there is that difference between how the boys are treated and how the girls are treated. So do you have a few kind of examples you could share of just this is what was happening and why you weren't okay with it?
Yeah. Well, at the kind of the upper level of like maybe an elite player, when you're getting ready to go to some of the camps, development camps, they were not the same. You didn't have the same level coaching. You didn't have the same level of facilities, of ice times, of even when you went to like the national tournament, what they were providing at the national tournament level between boys and girls was so vastly different that, the inequity was so visible. And if you've attended both, you see it. I suppose if you hadn't attended both, you wouldn't know, but I saw it. On the youth level, like as they were going up, just the kind of the they didn't really give my daughter that much attention. And once they realized she was good, then she started to gain some attention. But she was called honey. She was made fun of by the boys, and the coaches didn't really do much. And that really built up inside her. And so if she let it out, then they would point to her as like, oh, she's this. And it would just constantly just be a go. I mean, they didn't have locker rooms. She'd have to get changed in the bathroom. She didn't have other girls to play with. When we tried to get an opportunity to play with girls, where we'd have to maybe rethink how they were being brought together. We had some of the leadership teams disagree with that. And then I started to look deeper into where these are coming from. And I noticed there were 113 Hall of Fame members in the state of Wisconsin, and one was a woman, and she never played. And we had women like Karen Dietz, who's in the International Hall of Fame. She was on the Wheatie Box cover, right? She still was coaching high school at the time. Wasn't even in the Hall of Fame, and all the other, stars that grew up in Wisconsin weren't in the Hall of Fame. So the board makeups were all men. Everything was just kind of male. There was no girls committee. There was no nothing to really monitor or watch. And when I talked to the leadership teams about this, they would say, oh, that one woman, we support her, but they wouldn't do anything on their own. They just were supporting this one woman to basically make it equitable, and she was up against the world. It was really challenging to watch.
So what did you do to how did you force this change? Because it sounds like it took
a lot. It was a lot. So my big thing about change is that you have to make a commitment. I live by a rule that says for every choice there are consequences, both positive and negative, not only on yourself, but on your family and friends, on your community and society as a whole. So I really believe in the choices, action, behaviors that I do have to represent who I am and my mission and what I see. When I have a daughter and a son, or two different experiences, I said, I'm going to change this. And I went out, I don't recommend this at all, what I did, but I actually gathered every possible email address and contact in the state of Wisconsin that I could find that was affiliated with hockey. And it was a lot. And I wrote an open letter to WAHA. And the second part of this is that when you make a commitment, you really have to not just say what the issue is, you have to offer what some solutions are. So when I did this open letter, I was like, this is what it needs to look like. These are the experiences that I'm seeing between my son and daughter, and here are some solves, and I'm happy to help you solve these. And I would say the WAHA leadership really didn't look kindly upon that. That didn't go great, but I rallied one heck of a community in the state of Wisconsin. The amount of people that came out of the woodwork and said, hey, I agree with you, I see what's happening, how can I help? And that's kind of how the first step happened, and then we did lots.
Right.
What is the thing you're most proud of having accomplished?
I would say that growth, but the growth came because it wasn't just trying to make people aware that there's a difference. The growth was we actually went in and did the footwork. Yeah. We really did, and so I rallied a group of people. So anytime you're going to make change, and you make that commitment and you start to make choices that reflect your commitment, the only way you make it sustainable is if you build a community. So what I've witnessed a lot, and you've probably witnessed this as well, is you get a lot of parents engaged when their daughter's playing, and when their daughter leaves, it's gone. They'll change their own team or that team, but there's no big sustainable big change across the whole state. And so what we did was we gathered that together, and one of the first things we did was we created a Wisconsin Girls Hockey Facebook page, and that was massive. And within a couple years, we had 2,000 people engaged in it. And on Sundays, we started. I did this. It was just a lot of footwork, but I highlighted a female coach in the state, so that she could play. Right? She can coach. She can play. This is great. And then I gave people all over the state access to admin on that site so they could promote their own things. And then we started rolling out these, everybody's having these tournaments, and now people are engaged. And even if they played on a boys team, we try to include them in some way, like we making it so that we see you, we're acknowledging, we see you playing on the state tournament team and in the co-ed, but we see you. You may not have the opportunity to play in girls. So we started to do that, and then I one day, I was like, where are the women coaches? So I went through the entire USA Hockey database for coaches in the state of Wisconsin, and any one that had somewhat of a female name. And so I'm sorry about the Kyles out there and the Jordans, but I just had to start somewhere. And so I started to go through, and I'm like, I just took their names, and I hunted them down. I stalked them on Facebook and Instagram, and I reached out to them, and I told them what I was doing, and the response was great. They ended up having conversations, and they told me why they got pushed out of coaching and that they still wanted to coach. And so I tried a bunch of us tried to get him back into coaching, try to get him coaching some some girls events. Wasn't going well, so then we decided to create our own events and put the women in there. And so we did that. And that worked really well. And what it did was it showed the girls what it was like to have a woman coach, because there's a lot of parents out there that don't like women coaches. And so those girls loved it. And we do know, data will show you that if women coach, girls will stay in the game. And then it also gave those women more opportunity, more experience. So when it was time to go back to their club to coach, they had that experience and they had that reputation already. So I would say my proudest moment was really just it all.
Yep.
And now there's like 10 or 13 women in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and their board makeup is not just men. So there's a girls committee.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just proud of the whole entire package, and that it's still going strong. I check in every so often with the women there, and it's doing great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you were in Wisconsin, you did all this in Wisconsin, and then you ended up with the Gophers.
I did. I'm in Minnesota. What a drastic difference. The number of boys that play hockey in the state of Wisconsin is the same number of girls in Minnesota.
That's wild.
Yeah, so there's a lot more girls that play here.
I know, and I always get like, all right, we need to get more. And I've reached out to people from different states, and they're like, we aspire to be you.
Yeah.
Like, but you're trying to get more and don't feel like there's enough, and I don't want to be like, okay, everyone's aspiring to be us, so we're good. But I feel like there's so much more opportunity to get more females into like the sport, especially the sport of hockey that's not traditionally seen as a sport for females. I mean, even hockey families, their boys play, like they live and breathe hockey.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for their daughters to not play because you hear like, oh, they don't show interest. And I'm so curious with that whole concept where it's like, okay, you live and breathe hockey. That daughter is seeing hockey all the time, but is it that she doesn't see herself in hockey because there's still so much of the boys side? And if you're watching hockey, it may not be the females, and because I don't understand that like disconnect of our family lives and breathes hockey and our daughters have no interest and they're not going to play.
Right. That's so complicated. It's so complicated because it starts with in the home, right? So especially it depends on, if let's say you're in a heterosexual home, and a lot of times you're looking at the roles that are going on. You're looking at societal roles. You're looking at how you're treated at the rink. When my son they're 7 years apart, so when my son was playing, how they treated my daughter, with the girls stuff, and just making stereotypes about who she is and the girliness, and pink her up and kind of those kind of things have an impact. They really have an impact. And both their dad and myself were very conscious about those things. And so we both coached a lot of sports. We both played in the yard. We both talked about it all the time. But that's not common. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of starts in the home, and then it gets to the rink and like what's going on in the rink. And then starting to open up that opportunity. But if a girl doesn't feel comfortable and she sees what's going on, we're very perceptive as little kids. We're very, very perceptive. We can see the roles. We can see what's happening. We may not be able to say it, but we see it. And so they just may be like, you know what? I'm not sure.
It's not a space for me, or if I go there, I'm not going to be comfortable.
Yeah. And if I don't want to change in the bathroom over there, or I don't want to be treated like that. And there's, the culture can change. We can do better.
Right.
We can do better.
Right. And that's really the mission of Coaching Her. Correct.
Yes.
Is that so? Coaching Her.
Talk us through Coaching Her for anyone that's listening that isn't familiar.
Coaching Her right now is it's a toolkit for coaches, parents, leaders, really to upskill them on how to coach girls. And right now, currently, we have 6 foundational modules, so a foundational course. And those foundational modules represent, looking at what are the barriers, what are the stereotypes and biases we have, how to recognize a girl's hidden identity. Sometimes we may have a really bad period and we don't know how to talk about that, so it's kind of hidden. Or maybe there's an abusive relationship going on, or something else that's hidden that girls hide well. And then kind of how to support girls' needs through caring, competence, and choices. And so those are our foundational modules. We have 2 menstruation modules, kind of learning what menstruation is because it's very impactful, and how to create a menstrual-friendly environment, and that matters. Girls drop out of sport without having a menstrual-friendly environment. And then the third modules we have is body confident sports. We have body confident coach and body confident athlete. And the number one reason why girls drop out of sport is body confidence. And so how do we address that and get to be where we're a body talk free zone, so we don't talk about bodies or images, which is not an experience my daughter had.
Right.
The body shaming is real, and the weight, talking about weight, and that still exists.
Oh, yes. Very much.
A lot, and I watch it, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, you're not a real athlete, or you're probably not trying hard enough if you're not lean and thin.
Yeah, which is not correct at all.
Right. Right. Yeah, there are so many different body types, and I think the world is starting to see that. Some.
We're getting there.
We're
getting there, right?
Kind of, sort of going. Yeah.
No, remember,
not
it's
far
3
enough.
generations for change. 3 generations.
Okay, so we have some time.
Yeah.
Our grandkids. Not anytime soon.
I struggle with it, right? So I'm 55, and to go and not talk about my body and not think about my body after it's been ingrained in everything that I have ever experienced all the way through is very difficult. And to have a daughter and not talk about it is challenging. I don't get it right. I don't get it right with my son either, but I don't get it right. So for parents out there, it's challenging. For coaches out there, it's challenging. But you know what? It's okay to make a mistake. Just be accountable.
You're right. Learn from it.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's what we're hoping Coaching Her is that right now there are online learning modules that you can do within 20 to 30 minutes. You can start and stop whenever you want. But it's really looking at ourselves. It's self-reflective. So it's not like we want you to go from here to here. It's like the gamut is A to Z. And let's figure out where you are. And that's fine. If you're at a D, fine. But let's move you to an E. And that's by self-awareness, and then starting to look at, how are these things that, stereotypes and biases, how are they impacting me? And then how do they impact the others around me? And what things can I do to take action to get me that next step further? And once you do that, then it starts to roll on its own because we're self-aware.
Right.
So that's kind of our goal. And as we expand out, we're actually starting to do micro modules on all things like ACL tears, prevention, because 80% can be prevented for girls. The female triad, overuse injuries, which is really common, mental health in girls. And so we're starting to expand in that, and then going into events and other avenues to really just try to get out there and make a change, make a difference.
Right. Yeah, because the way we treat girls and the verbiage that we use to explain them or describe them as
Yeah.
athletes, like you saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
Like that matters, because some people may be like, well, they're getting the same opportunities because they can both play hockey and they can both go to a national camp. So why is it so important for them to have equal,
Yeah.
or why does that matter?
It's not about being equal. It's really about equity, and it's about meeting the girls where they're at. I think when we really take a look back at sport is male. So sport's been developed by men, it's been designed by men, it's run by men, and the rules are created by men. It's coached by men, the equipment's designed by men, and we're different. And we're different, it's nature versus nurture, different. We are nature, we are different. Our hormones are different. We injure differently. We hit puberty at different times. And we hit puberty, things change. We get estrogen more. Boys get testosterone. We lose, different muscle groups when we hit puberty, which causes our injuries to be different. And menstruation causes injuries. We can cuss different. But also we're treated differently in society. So we are different and experience the world differently because of that. And so instead of pushing everything as it's a boys' sport and we should just exist in it and we want to be in that same boys' sport, maybe we need to think about how do we meet the girls where they're at. And, it's all different. And right now, if you look at like women's soccer, pro soccer, I think you have Emma Hayes, who is the coach, was like, we should just blow this up because our women's soccer has been basically men's soccer, just, kind of put in that same track. We really need to rethink this. And I think we're seeing this in the NWHL, the WNBA. We're starting to rethink at how we approach this because the game is beautiful when it's played by women and girls. It's beautiful. It's just different, but it's beautiful and it's appreciated, right? We look at tennis, same thing. It's just a little different. Maybe Serena can't beat the top men's player, but I enjoy watching it the same. And it's so impressive. But I think if we just start to look at how do we meet the girls where they're at and the women where they're at and appreciate what they bring to the game, I think we're going to expand it greatly and tap into a market of girls who haven't played before to start playing. And that's what we really want, because when girls play, they succeed, they're healthier, they have healthier families, they have less depression, they have less anxiety, they're just healthier in every way. And they succeed occupationally. So we really want girls to participate, so let's meet them where they're at.
Right. So if I'm a busy coach and I don't have time, or don't think I have time to go through the modules, what are some of the key takeaways that, okay, next season I coach, a 10U girls or 12U girls hockey team. So what are a few takeaways, like even if it's hockey specific possibly, that I can implement into like my coaching program?
First thing, I would definitely breeze through the how to create a menstrual friendly environment if you're coaching 10 to 12-year-olds, because when those girls have their first period, you're going to experience it during that time frame, and you want to make sure that they're comfortable and they're not missing because of it. So I think that's really big. And the other thing I think is, especially at that 10 to 12, when it's the end before they hit puberty, where their talent level, it usually is exceeding boys at this point, like, because physiologically they're pretty much the same up to that point, and so you see a lot of dominance with the girls. Is start to look at reflecting a little bit about your stereotypes and biases. Like, what is it that you really, what are some things that you don't realize you're saying about girls? I mean, I am still not perfect on this. Like, right. I do this. Like, I catch myself all the time. But like I was saying earlier, like, catch something as simple as maybe you think girls are more emotional than boys. And you think about that for a minute. And I think one of the activities we have in the modules is like, okay, so girls are emotional, if that's your stereotype. And then think of like, well, some girls are more emotional than other girls. And some boys are more emotional than other boys. But some girls are more emotional than other boys, and some boys are more emotional than some girls. So when you really look at that, you realize, wait, they're all unique. And that's the really key takeaway, is that we're all really unique individuals, and that we should maybe try to avoid the stereotypes of differences and the stereotype of that we're all the same.
Right. Yeah. And just on the emotional side, like there are so many tears on the ice, both boys and girls. So it cracks me up when I hear that, like, oh, the girls are just so much more emotional. It's so much harder to coach them. It's like, I've been on the ice with the boys and they cry just as much.
And they punch each other,
if
and
not
they
more.
break their sticks, and they throw temper tantrums. They do all the things. It's just that they're not as many tears, and so it's not labeled the same way because it looks different. But it's, let me tell you, it's no less emotional.
Yeah, the emotion is there, right? Whether it's aggression or whether it's tears, it's emotion.
Yep.
But I've heard so many of those stereotypes at the rink, especially, when I first came in and just saw the girls were being treated their team was called the Baby Blues, and they were being treated as like little babies and getting picked up off the ice, and not the same expectations weren't there. And I was the only female coach from 8U and 6U, so from preschool to third grade. And so having conversations with the male coaches with just the things I was seeing, a lot of times the common response was like, well, boys are just more aggressive than girls. So that's why there's a difference between, how they are at practices and how the girls are at practices and how they're treated. And it's just like, okay, if you're viewing these hockey players through that lens, then you are going to have, without possibly knowing, you're going to have vastly different ways of treating those players. And, my pushback to them is like, well, they're out here, they want to be hockey players. Like, teach them how to be hockey players. And also watch that girl, because she is kicking ass in that corner and she is incredibly aggressive. And then, like, watch that boy who wants nothing to do with fighting for the puck in the corner, and kind of that, like, no, it's the individual player. And as coaches, that's one of the biggest ways to become a very good coach, is to actually be able to acknowledge and understand the differences between your players and approach them in different ways to get the best out of each of them, versus just one single, this is how I treat everyone, and everyone's just going to respond in the same way.
So one of the things we want out of all these conversations we're having is tangible things that people can do. And so if Sarah or I are in a situation where we are seeing the female, the youngest female skaters being treated completely different than the male female players, what are some small things that you recommend that a female coach or a female parent does? Because not all of us are going to storm into the board meeting and be like, what the heck, but not everyone's that aggressive. I wish they would.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there is backlash. So just so you know, if anybody's going to do that, you do get pounded a little bit, but you got to be strong.
What are some things we can do to influence change that are maybe more within the average person's comfort zone?
It's the choices that we make. So it's kind of like, when do you speak up, when you don't speak up. I will say this, when three things to making change. One is being committed, right? But it's not just saying the words committed. So it's like, I like to go to a board and say, okay, you're telling me that you really are committed to, you want more girls, or you want, girls hockey. What are you doing that shows girls and families and boys that you're committed to girls? What are you doing? Because when nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you're not changing anything, you're not making, that commitment isn't there. So what are those? And then where's your compassion? So your compassion is, one, for both of you, for instance, don't overwork yourself. And because you got to, if you want to continue to coach, you have to have compassion for yourself and your time, right? And your energy, because it can be exhausting. And compassion of meeting those girls where they're at. So I think the big part right now is you're asking about what choices. So you commit, you're going to do more than commit. You're actually going to make choices that are going to reflect that commitment. And then how do you kind of call out and get people engaged into doing that? One is keeping it positive and having solutions, right? So if you see something, just be like, hey, I notice, this is what's going on. Have you, I'm pretty experienced in coaching girls. Have you done this, or have you thought about this? Because I've watched her in this, and she's really good in the corners, and maybe try, going, hey, you're doing really good in the corners, and, you know, trying to kind of keep it more on the positive note with her. Like suggesting little ways that are not going to cause defensiveness. I think when it gets to equity work and gender, people get defensive because they feel like you're accusing them they're doing something wrong, which is not what I'm doing. I think what's happening is we just don't know what we don't know. We live in these worlds where we just kind of go along, and if we're not aware and we're not, you know, don't see it, no one's talking to us about it, we don't know what our role is, right? We don't know how to fit in. So I think, one, doing that. Two is, you know, doing things that promote girls. Wearing gear from the PWHL, following that and talking to teams and suggesting out to coaches that they're following that, and not only on the co-ed but on the girls, both girls and co-ed, that they're talking about those players, that you're bringing in high school girls in to show both the boys and the girls the game, right? That you're getting more women engaged in coaching, like moms, just getting them on the ice. Those are good ways to start. But then if you really have to deal with a specific issue, it's just really trying to keep it positive and suggest a solution. And not maybe one, maybe two, so that they have a choice, because they're more apt to make a change if they feel they have the power in it to make the choice.
So it's kind of creating that awareness of, yes, we've talked about this. We agree that it's important. Like, we've verbalized this and agree. And then, you know, not just talking the talk, but also encouraging them to walk the walk.
Yeah.
So how are you, yes, you're saying all these things, but are your actions matching up to that? And I'm guessing that can kind of create some light bulb and awareness moments of like, oh, that's true. We're actually still only having conversations about the boys or the co-ed side, and we are forgetting about the girls side, or just assuming that what we're doing over here is going to work fine over there, or maybe we're unintentionally doing, you know, growth activities that are geared, you know, more towards the interests of the boys,
like a check-in clinic.
right
But not including the girls on the board, you know, like how to check along the board.
Right. Or our association has a body contact clinic. And in my mind, with where the girls' game is now, with not allowing checking, is it's actually more important for them to go through that. But they did not.
Oh, and that's
like
so
the boys
too,
went through
because
it.
you also learn how to get hit, which is more important than learning how to hit sometimes.
That is very true.
Right.
That is very true.
I know the girls didn't do that. That's
No, I asked. And that the excuse was it was a co-op thing, and so the girls had a co-op between two associations, and then the boys don't, and it's like okay, and
going forward,
let's
fix it.
It is very important for them to learn body contact, because they can't just go out and check. So but I don't know if that always crosses people's mind.
Biggest thing that when you go to a board and you're talking about this, if it brought up, is say, all right, what would be 3 things that we could do this year that would be to support and commit to that, to grow the game? Maybe we want to bring a friend day. Maybe, like, what is it that we could do? It doesn't have to be the most challenging thing. It needs to be where, like this, when we say meeting the girls where they're at, I'm saying meeting the board where they're at and the club, right? So whatever step is a step. So what does that look like? You know, how do we make it better? And I think once that happens, you'll see a really big change. And then challenging the coaches that have a girl on the team. You know, what are some things you could do this year that could actually make it so that everybody is learning from this, the boys and the girls, and that we're committing to making it, you know, to grow the game for girls. And it makes a big difference.
Right. And I think one very simple change that you had brought up previously was with the high school players. Like, just bring the girls in, both on the girls' side and the boys' side. Have them coaching on both sides. And because it really is a lot, once the boys, especially the younger ages, like you said, they're very perceptive. And they start seeing those female coaches and those female players and are looking up to them. And then that then changes their, you know, biases towards female athletes. That could, and parents too, you know, if they're watching from the stands, it's like, oh, that girl really can play. And then, you know, you just kind of pick away at those
Yeah.
pieces that not everyone is aware of.
Yeah.
Like I always call them like the undercurrents.
Yeah.
And like we talked about in previous podcasts, I know, especially when I was sharing my story, it's like those undercurrents had a huge impact on my belief in myself. And like, I think you kind of alluded to that with your daughter, where it's just like, you know, being told you're not enough or you're not really an athlete. And even if it's only once a year,
But there's that imposter syndrome that builds. Yes.
Yeah, you absorb all of that. And so that is the environment that a lot of female athletes currently find themselves in, which is why even coaches, it's so much easier to just stop and back down and step away, because it takes a lot to absorb all of that kind of negativity and those biases. Yeah.
And it's exhausting. I mean, even trying to make change, it's exhausting, right?
Right.
But I think one thing that we need to think about, parents and coaches and leaders, is I think we don't understand what girls go through today. And we are really expected to be a lot. So we're expected to have that perfect body. And it's not, I mean, as a mom, I was not perfect. And so my daughter, you know, maybe she does have body image issues. It may be stemming from me. I tried, but that still exists. But trying to create a different environment from the beginning for our daughters to kind of evolve and go, because they go through a lot. And even now with social media, you know, COVID hit girls the hardest, and then social media picked up. And for girls, social media is about Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. It's about body image. It's about, you know, the unrealistic expectations of what girls have, and what, you know, these perfect scenarios. And boys are on Discord, they're gaming, and they're having conversation with their friends. And so it's a very different environment for boys and girls today. And, you know, playing sports takes them away from that, which is great, right? It puts them on the ice, but also understanding and have compassion that, you know, maybe those girls are lacking confidence, and maybe they're not quite as aggressive, some of them, but what can you do to make them more aggressive? I mean, we can be aggressive. I can be aggressive.
Yes.
My daughter can be aggressive, sometimes too much, right? But we can do that. Just how as coaches do we, you know, it's a challenge. How do we get those kids that aren't aggressive to be more aggressive, both boys and girls? And how do we get the way too aggressive ones to, you know,
do it at an appropriate time?
You know, and maybe not use their mouths as much. You know, there's a challenge for everyone. And so I think it's a cop-out to say the girls are less confident than, and I think as coaches we just have to do better there.
Right.
So one thing that Sarah and I have run into several times with people we've met through our hockey communities is women that used to play. And we have tried guilt, shame, bribery, anything to get them to come back. Just like, you can do it, you belong, but there is something, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing, I don't know if it's that kind of imposter thing, I don't know what it is, but there is several women that just, there's a wall. And what recommendations do you have for getting, kind of breaking through that wall, or just inviting people in? Because that, like you said, is what gets the girls to stay, is having female coaches and having female role models.
Yeah. I think one is listening to them. Once you find them, listen and hear about their experiences and really validate their experience. We've all had pretty bad experiences at some point. And boys have them too. I'm not... and just listening and validating, and what is it that they would want to come back to coaching or come into coaching with. So that is, to me, is always something that makes change happen, is listening and then reflecting and trying to figure out how you can meet them where they're at. Some of the ways are, besides asking, which is the number one way to get a woman to coach, right, is asking, is co-coaching, so there's not as much time commitment, and making, you know, get them comfortable. Just remember, because we have to realize that society still has societal roles on us, and we're trying to do it all. And we see men take off of works, and the women stay home and watch the kids so they can coach. But do men never do that for women? Not necessarily. Not, you know, it's not as common. It happens, but it's not as common. And so we still have to go against those roles. And I think I think one of the things that worked really well for us in Wisconsin was, one, we had that Facebook page where we were promoting women coaching, and that went really well. But also we started creating events for girls. So our big thing in Wisconsin, because we don't have very many girls playing, is that you had areas where girls could only play with boys. And then there was the areas where girls could play with girls, and then there were parents and coaches like, that's the only way they should play is with girls. And then, but some of them wanted to play with the boys, and which is fine. But then we started to create these events across the state where we could get all the girls together, especially if they're rural, right? So they are only like 1 or 2 girls on a team, and play with girls, and what an experience. It keeps them in the game longer. But we then opened that up for women to coach, and that was perfect little like tidbit of to get them on the ice for just a short period of time. Might have been a weekend, might have been a week, maybe it was to prepare for a tournament, so it was 4 weeks in a row, and it was 1 or 2 nights a week. That's it. That's all they had to commit to, and that kind of started to build their confidence and start to knock down some of those walls and those stress points of the trauma that they experienced, in the past, that environment they were in and that they don't want to be part of. It starts to break that down a little bit. So I think those are some good ways to just really get them started. And then I think the key is along the way is valuing them and realizing how much they can bring to the game and not just keep putting them at the youngest levels.
Yeah, that's a big I know there's a few female coaches within our association that are moving up a level from that 8U mites to 10U, and they've already kind of mentioned like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna, there's too much pressure at that level, which is funny because they're still 9 and 10, maybe 11-year-olds.
The unfortunate part is some of that's coming from the kids. Their own children are saying, "Ooh, mom, I don't know if you can." I'm like, what are we teaching our little boys that they think it's okay to say that? First of all, and mine are. I will be the first one to say, I obviously mother coaching I'm doing, but my kids are still like, "Oh, mom, you're the girl coach," and they've learned. But they, that's one of those things where they don't see other girls, and so just like the little girls don't see this as like a future for them, the boys don't see other girls, and so, ladies, if you're listening, please join us.
Right. What is it like then for you at the rink where they're seeing this? How are you treated by the other coaches, men, board?
It is. It's a spectrum. There are people that are so welcoming and so kind and so like, how can I help you? Or you've taught me a bunch, like, how can I support you? Very supportive relationships, very whatever, like, how can I help? And that's amazing. There is the ones that are kind of like, hey, what's up? And that's fine too. Not everyone's your best friend. And not everyone's a good mentor either, right?
Right.
I mean, everyone has the people they connect with, and that's just part of being a human being. And then you have the other ones that are standoffish. You have there's still, in some instances, a little bit of that old boys club. There is the ones that don't think, especially on the board side, that don't think in terms of males and females in our association. It's the boys, and then the girls can do it too if we have time and money for it.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. And so there's a wide spectrum, but I do have to say that for the most part, there's way more on the supportive end.
Oh, great.
But those, unfortunately, with, like you're talking about trauma in your past, those aren't the voices you hear.
Right. Right.
Those you hear them, but those aren't the ones that stick. Those aren't the ones that make you go home from the rink and go, gosh, I never want to go back.
Yeah, right. That's when you need a community.
Yes.
Of like women that you can go to and that you can share your experiences and talk it through.
That's where we have created a female coaches group within our association, and even as I hear of other coaches in surrounding areas, we've included them, and we're looking at different ways to bring in even more moms to learn how to play hockey or to learn about hockey. I was thinking about doing like a hockey 101 that's specifically for like females and moms to like even just in a classroom
learn the game.
Yeah,
because that's, I think, a hard part is because traditionally hockey's been such a male sport, the little boys and girls that are playing, they're hearing everything they know about hockey from dad for the most part, and so they think that kind of reinforces that women don't necessarily belong here stereotype. And so if we can get mom the education to speak about hockey in a way that makes sense to her kid and is intelligent and is meaningful, then all of a sudden it's another voice that makes sense in that world and makes the girls feel welcome.
So, hey, I would say to all the moms out there that wanted to learn it, I didn't play it, but I was an athlete. And once you're an athlete, especially a team sport, it all makes sense. And it's really easy. I think it's pretty easy to pick up in the sense of I could coach. I could. And I could actually coach at a pretty high level now because I've watched so much hockey. But I get it. I understand it. And I think trying to break that down. And it comes to, though, I think a lot of support and how you're treated and respected. If we're not valued and, we hear that, like coming back to our group and kind of talking it through is really important. But I think I wish parents had that opportunity to do that because women get picked on by far more than men do. Parents question our ability. I know it's being talked about at home because the kids are questioning the same, and they probably shouldn't be. They're a kid playing, and they have a coach that probably knows what they're doing, and they may go about it getting from point A to Z differently, but that's okay because there's not one way to get there. Just like there's not one way to go pro. There's a lot of avenues, and I think we bring a lot to the game, and that respect is really important. And I would say on the parents' end, I think I told you right away, is one of the first things as an athletic director that I talk to my coaches about is start off at the beginning of the season saying, yes, I'm a female coach. Yes, I know you're going to question me, and no, I should be here because I'm good enough to be here, and I was selected to be here. And if you have a problem, keep it to yourself. But the kid comes first, then you can talk to me with the athletic director, and I would have the athletic director's back, and it just shut it down. And that created a culture where I could hire women, and they were going to stay, because that culture was there and that reputation was there.
Right. Yeah, we both have experienced multiple times being questioned, and right at the beginning, before we even have a practice,
which is amazing. Because you think about it as a parent, and I can look back now, right? Like I know it's different when you're right in the moment, but like really, it doesn't necessarily matter that much. What matters is that your coach loves your kid, and that's going to have, they're going to be rules, and there's going to be boundaries, and they're going to teach you and help you develop character, because some character is developed just in the game, but other character traits need to be actually taught. And I will tell you that there are a lot of my kids' coaches were men, and those character traits were not taught, and I had to teach those at home, and it was probably the most disappointing thing about sport, especially today. I see it happening a lot because of it's a paid to play kind of thing, and paid coaches that they're not there's character development's not happening. They're trying to appease the parents. But I would say parents really need to kind of take a breath and show respect, and that's a good teaching moment for those children.
Right. I would say especially like I'm coaching girls, so it feels that much more of a knife to the heart when it's like your girls are picking up on this and they're absorbing it, like because they're girls and they're seeing how other females are being treated, and no matter how careful you're being, like they're you said, they're more perceptive than we give them credit for. And they're feeling what I'm feeling.
And guess who's not going to go into coaching? So basically, when I hear parents do that, and when they come, it's like I'm saying, you're telling your daughter that she's not going to be a good enough coach
just because she's your daughter. Like that's it.
She's a girl. So like rethink that. Like, what are the consequences of those choices that they're making? And this is where the positive and negative comes into play. Is think that through, because it's going to impact your daughter and your son,
right?
Going forward and in their future,
right? And I've never called out that, I'm a female coach and I'm treated differently, essentially, at my parent meeting. But I think I'm going to take that challenge, and next year I'm going to do it. I may reach out to you for good words. I can just read a script, but I think it is important because
pulling out the elephant in the room.
Well, it is. It's like we feel it very heavily
Yeah.
at the beginning of every year because a lot, we'll have some of the same parents and coaches who we've built trust with.
Yeah.
And then, you'll have those new folks where you are starting fresh. And so to call it out and that will also help to create awareness of the parents maybe will think, did I think of this person in a different way than I would have if it was her assistant coach who was the head coach.
I'm the opposite. I was so stubborn. I was like, I am not calling this out. I'm purposely not saying, I am here, the end. And for me, it was really just about that stubbornness of I shouldn't have to explain myself. I shouldn't have to. Unfortunately, we do, but this year in particular. And then I got mad, and it was a conversation with my husband. And he's like, or you could just tell people that you're qualified and explain your qualifications. I'm like, but I don't want to.
I shouldn't have to.
I shouldn't have to. And actually, he and I had a really good conversation about that, and I got maybe a little heated. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But it was, for me, it was just that I shouldn't have to. And unfortunately, we're in a place in the world where we do, right? And that's my hope for the next generation is they don't have to.
Yes.
Right. But I think just by saying it isn't just, you can call it out exactly this. So, I don't want to call this out right now, but I'm going to because this is where we're at. And I'm doing this because I want a better future for your sons and daughters.
Yeah.
And hopefully going forward, you won't have to ask.
Yep.
You can be creative and nice about it. My words right now maybe aren't the best, but think it through a little bit and kind of what is a good way to address it without compromising.
Yeah.
Where you're putting yourself in a position where you feel less than because you have to do it.
Right. So CoachingHer is available online for free. If you are a USA Hockey coach and you need continuing ed credits, I believe now CoachingHer is part of the USA Hockey curriculum or continuing ed.
Yeah, so we actually, our curriculum is in a lot of the national governing bodies, and so USA Hockey, they were redoing their educational platform, so I'm not sure where it's at right now, but yes, that's all available in there.
Yep, so you could go, and I know I went through the CoachingHer program, and it spoke to me so much as a female athlete, so if you are a male coach and you are going through it, just, keep that in mind. I have not met a female athlete who has said oh no, I don't see myself in these biases or these phrases or these experiences at all. So it is real world experiences and, like you said, trauma that female athletes are taking on. So just take that program
even
seriously.
If it's just one module or half a module, just start it. And then kind of go from there. And you can stop. They just start it, though, and see where you're at and take that moment of self-reflection and see where you feel like you're fit in and then decide whether you want to go further.
Right. There's so much of our daily lives that are just autopilot. So I think a big part of that program is, kind of picking a way of what am I doing without even thinking and how is this impacting the people around me?
Yeah.
All right. So we always end our episodes with talking about the tangible things we want to take away. What specifically do you want people to take away from our time with you today that they can bring into their world and implement that's not, taking on?
I think the biggest, one of the biggest things that I think is that I want everyone who's probably listening to this is committed, right? So it's really, what are you doing that reinforces your commitment, that shows it to the world? I have my own mission that I kind of fall back on, but what is it and in what choice are you making? And it can be something as simple as you're buying gear from the PWHL or you're doing something to support, and you can do that quietly on your own, but it's, or you're following them on social media, or you're making, or you can go and put a letter out to the whole state. I mean, you can take the gamut, right? So what are you doing to commit is kind of, I think, a really important piece. And that could be simply just taking a CoachingHer module, just try it and see, or reach out, and anytime anyone reaches out, we love, especially in the state of Minnesota, because our goal is to make Minnesota the #1 girls and women's sport state in the U.S. We're working with the Minnesota Sports and Entertainment Commission and Meet Minneapolis to do so. And so, if anything you can do to make it better, and if that's taking a module, take a module.
Awesome.
Right.
All right. You got the final one?
Final question. What do you want your legacy in? Usually we say hockey, but we can say female
Females.
sports.
Yep.
Female
to be.
sports. I want the next generation to have more, to have better. I think every girl deserves to reach their desired potential, whether that's playing or staying in the game. I just want to see it better.
I like it. That's why we are here.
That's
as well.
exactly why we're here.
It's like sports are so amazing for so many reasons, and
Yeah.
for females to not feel like it's the place for them, it just does the whole world a disservice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Before we wrap it up here, just want to remind everyone that they can find your information online. Also, you were someone that was recommended to us by a couple people, and Sarah fell in love with you, the CoachingHer program. But if anyone listening has anyone that they think that we should talk to, we'd love to hear your suggestions. We've gotten a ton of great feedback about people who have really great stories that should be shared with everybody. So feel free to reach out to us online.
To women who give a puck at gmail.com.
Yep.
It's a way
send
you
us
can
an
email.
Yep. Or even if you just have feedback. I got a ton of feedback at a family wedding this weekend, which was a lot intimidating. But yeah, reach out to Sarah and I. If you have questions for Alicia, reach out to her. Her information's on the Tucker Center website. But yeah, thank you for being here today.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Always.
Yes, thank you so much. And to end the podcast, I want to remind all you ladies out there that we belong in hockey and we deserve to be a part of the greatest game in the world.
And just remember to invite somebody else in.
Awesome.
Awesome.